All right. Aren't we lucky? Now that we're all experts, we're going to pick up where we left off and basically acknowledge that early childhood education doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's the beginning of a lifelong journey. And what happens in these early years makes all the difference on the next steps on that path, from K-12 and beyond, depending on what your path is. We have a lot to cover. We're so fortunate to be with true leaders in this field. And you've dedicated your career to child welfare and leveraging education, particularly to escape poverty in academia, in law, as First Lady of Virginia, and as the Commonwealth Secretary of Education. I often say that a child doesn't just magically arrive in kindergarten. Each child brings a different experience with them, from health, education, hunger, trauma, etc. You've worked at each intersection of this, from pre-K to K, elementary to middle, middle to high, and so on. What can you share about this early transition period from your experience and what it means for children?
Well, it's just so crucial, as you know, and as this crowd knows, where children start in kindergarten determines so much of their trajectory in life. And as you know, it's different for different families. And, you know, I've worked a lot of my career in the world of foster care and juvenile delinquency, and, you know, kids who come up in families that are not well supported in those early years because of financial difficulties, young parents, all the panoply of challenges, just do not have the same chances as our children did, and as we wish for all of our children. So the early years are just crucial.
Senator Kaine, you've worked as someone whose day job, it is to advocate that our federal government expand access to early education, child care. You've been a committed champion, and thank you for that. What led you to take this on in Congress and continue to take it on? What can you say about the opportunity ahead, the bipartisan nature of it, and the room of women who are thinking about that as a path? So take it from here.
Thanks to Engage for inviting me. I think I might be the only male panelist today, which makes me really excited. But I'm kind of here as a double +1. So I'm married to this one, so I'm a +1 for this fantastic educator and child champion. But I think I'm also here as a +1 because Patty Murray, who is like our real champion on child care issues in the Senate, and she and I worked so closely together on this. I'm sure she was wrapped up with appropriation stuff this morning. But yeah, what did inspire this interest? It's a number of different things. Anne and I have 3 kids. They're 33, 31, and 27. 33, 30, and 27. And their child care experiences, you know, before kindergarten were some at home with Anne, some in private homes, private home child care, some in church-based child care, some in the Virginia Preschool Initiative, our state public school pre-K. And I could just see each kind of setting can work. And so then when I became governor especially, I had a really good team, and we decided to dramatically expand child care in Virginia. We did, although I'm jealous of the DC Universal for 3 and 4. We still don't have that. I wish we did, but we dramatically expanded it. But we also looked at things like implementing the quality rating system so that we would continually push up the quality of child care, which is great for parents. So it was a natural when I came to the Senate, having done a lot of work on it as governor, and just seeing in our own kids' lives the value of different child care settings, but also heard tales of woe from an awful lot of families about cost, and tales of woe from great child care providers about their salaries. It was natural to work on it. And I'm happy to say that in the budget that we just got done at the end of December, we increased the key federal program, the Child Care Development Block Grant, funding by 30% in 1 year, which is just unheard of. But it was in response to what I hear everywhere, which is I'd like to be back in the workforce. I can't find high-quality, affordable child care. Or the providers that say, I want to pay my people more, but if I did, the parents of my kids couldn't afford it. And so how can you help close that gap? There are things we need to do in addition to the Child Care Development Block Grant. And Patty and I have a bill that we're going to reintroduce this year that will be some direct grants to providers. It will cap a family's child care expenses at 7% of their income, and then reimburse providers to the extent that it costs more than that. But this is good for kids, good for families, good for the economy. I mean, every employer right now is saying, well, where are the people? We can't hire people. Unemployment rate's lowest since 1969. Millions of people are out of the workforce for the single reason that they can't find high-quality, affordable childcare. So it's good for every aspect, and especially since Engage is about women's economic empowerment, the empowerment of the individual, the empowerment of women generally in the economy. We've got to go farther.
Can I just chime in a
please.
little bit on what we're doing with the resources that Congress, thank you very much, has sent to the states? So I'm currently on the Virginia Board of Education, and we're actually at a moment of bipartisan serious work to enhance the quality and expand access to early childhood in Virginia, starting with efforts that Tim and his predecessor Mark Warner began as governor that have built up over the years. But now finally we have gotten to the point where we're doing structural things like bringing the child care funds and the education funds under one rubric and doing a systematic across birth to kindergarten process of quality rating system. We're doing structural work to enhance the workforce. We are doing salary enhancements, but nothing as bold as what DC is doing. I'm envious of that across the line. But salary enhancements that are tied to credentialing and training. And it's making a real difference. So we need Congress to keep working on it and send us more funds. We do have state funds for it. As I say, it is, and it's very much a public-private partnership. It's exciting work that really could be a model for elsewhere once fully funded.
I know money makes a difference. It really does make a difference. It really, really does. In the previous panel, we talked a little bit about the workforce, and you started to acknowledge that. It's such a key piece of this, and the funding that you spoke of in the Child Care Development Block Grant and the work that's happening in Virginia, it does help. But can we say a little bit more, because you cannot pick, if for anybody around here, you can't pick up a paper in the United States today, locally, any congressional district, any state, where you're not going to hear about the crisis facing child care. It was not manufactured. So maybe a little bit more on that piece of it.
Do you want to tackle like from the state side, and then I'll talk about
Well, yeah, just
federal?
to say that, some of the data we've been shown at the Board of Ed is that the turnover in the child care workforce, you all know this, is virtually 100%. Every year the workforce turns over completely. And that's expensive, training and, leaving aside the implications for quality. We all know our children need continuity, right? But leaving aside the quality aspect of it, it's expensive. So if you can get to the point, you can make a case for better pay as an economic efficiency move in the long run. If you can pay folks better, you can retain them and build them up rather than having to disrupt the system literally constantly. So I think the workforce is crucial. And we pay our people who take care. In fact, one of our children is a child care worker, and takes care of he's a big, tall guy, and he takes care of 2-year-olds. And he's the kind who lives on next to nothing anyway. And anyway, that's his passion. But watching how that works, it just doesn't. The economics don't work.
It's not sustainable.
Couple of things on workforce. One at the federal level, one at the state level. Imagine most of you know this because you're educators in the room, but you can't use a Pell Grant for a high-quality career and technical education. You can use it for college, but you can't use it for high-quality career and technical education. We've set the Pell Grant so that it is only available for courses that are the length of a college semester, 15 weeks. So a lot of really high-quality training programs are short-term. They may be 8 weeks, but they're 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. There's more classroom hours than in a college semester. We've allowed Pell to be used flexibly. Full-time students, part-time students, summer students, folks in prisons and jails can use Pell, which is great. But we've never allowed it to be used for shorter-term kind of credentials that you can stack up and build a career on. I have a bill with Mike Braun of Indiana to basically just say, well, Pell can be used for high-quality career in tech as long as you've got quality measures to make it. And that could include short-term but smart and intense child worker training programs that you could then stack one upon another. I think the the timing for this bill is right because Democratic and Republican versions are being introduced. This could be a way of incentivizing people to get training and go in. I think we need to do more in the public service loan forgiveness space for child care workers. You know, not just if you're working in the Richmond Public School, 3 and 4 year pre-K program, but if you're in a private setting and you're doing this, well, why not public service loan forgiveness for you that could encourage you to take some of these? And then the other thing is we had to do this in Virginia. We have about 22 community colleges, 23, okay, some with multiple campuses. Many had some training programs for child care workers, but they were different. There was not an aligned curriculum. And over time, we've sort of aligned the curricula across the community college. So if you are getting this training in Emporia, but then you later want to move to Winchester, you've got a credential that everybody in Winchester, okay, I know what this is. So alignment of training curriculums across the state is a helpful thing to do.
Excellent. You both touched a little bit on bipartisanship happening in Virginia, and certainly we love to hear about it. Can we say a little bit more about a path forward, if there is one? I know we talked about the funding increases. We want to continue to see those. It's my plug. But where we are again, it's not a manufactured crisis. The issue's not going to go away. We need to be doing more to help the workforce, as well as parents and children. But what you see as a hopeful sign, potentially in the next little bit.
Can I tackle that one first at the federal level and then hand to you? So, because I'll go, what's some bipartisan areas where we can move, but what are some areas where we still are not finding much bipartisanship, where I hope we could. So the Child Care Development Block Grant Program is really popular. I mean, I think because it's to states and then states can fashion their own program, we get significant Republican support. Yeah, let's increase CCDBG. And so that was why we were able to get the 30% increase last year. It was not like, that we were being fought by Republicans on that. Now, there's going to be a budget battle this year with houses under each control. The Senate will have a budget. The House budget will likely be smaller if they can pass one. I have some doubts about, with such a narrow margin in the House, whether they're going to even be able to do an omni. And what I'm worried about is then that defaults back to a continuing resolution. But anyway, Child Care Development Block Grant, bipartisan. That's great. Okay, now we move to areas where we still have to find some more support. Patty and I have a bill, the bill we put in last year. It wasn't bipartisan because it was more than CCDBG. It sort of changed the structure, this 7% cap for families not having to pay more than that, some direct payments to providers. What we found was Republicans were like, we do need to spend more on child care, but let's just increase CCDBG rather than do a reformatting. And so we may need some of you to kind of help us, like, is it just more funds for CCDBG, or what is the right way to think of new elements to the program and how we can convince Republicans? Then the other area, we need to do immigration reform. I mean, we need to do immigration reform. We really do, because if you look at the percentages of people who work in the healthcare industry, well, 18% weren't born in the United States. And if we did early childhood workers, broadly defined, I don't know what the number is, but I'm going to tell you, it's probably 20% or north of 20%. And if we don't do an immigration reform, there's no way Americans' birth rates are just going to dramatically increase, and we can't just cannibalize each other's workforces. Like, well, I'll just get somebody from Richmond to move to Alexandria, or somebody to move from a public school to a private pre-K program. We've got to grow the size of the workforce. And while immigration reform has been really tough in Congress, there is starting to emerge well, the unemployment rate's so low. What are we going to do? And I think there may be a path, even in a divided Congress, for an immigration reform that's very workforce-based. So, how are we going to grow America's workforce? And that could really provide a benefit to child care, too.
My husband is an eternal optimist. I hope you're right that there's bipartisan potential on immigration reform. I will say the Virginia landscape. So Virginia is, you all know this, it's very much a purple state. What's the right word? A hot purple state, because we have divided government right now, and we're right on the cusp of who's in charge in both of our houses. of the legislature, and so it's just very always ramped at a ramped up level. So I can tell you that in education, where I spend most of my space, my work these days, most of my time, there's very little bipartisan going on, and so it makes it even all the more remarkable that the early childhood space is a bipartisan effort, and it's ones that have been continued over the course of several governorships of different parties and just really ramping up to the next level. And so it's a sign of the importance of the issue and how across the board the recognition is that we need to address it. It's also, we've been smart about some of the details. I mean, it is a public-private partnership. We recognized early on that we couldn't get to the quantity of access that we needed without including all parties, from home-based care up through the public preschools. So it wasn't all trying to ramp up the public sector. It was ramping up the quality and access across all sectors. That really helped on the bipartisanship. The only other thing we're doing in Virginia education space that's even remotely bipartisan is literacy, and early literacy work is very important, and that also has been able to be something that we've able to come together on. Overall, it's just tough.
It's tough, I know. We're going to end the same question. What are you hopeful for about, and what do you call to action to this room of doers?
So call to action. At some point, if you see us put an immigration reform proposal on the table, you should wait for us to see if we can find something that's bipartisan. They have to be bipartisan. But at some point, if you see us do that, boy, we really need people pushing. Because what we learned in 2013, we did a bipartisan immigration reform bill, but the supporters were generally tepid while the opponents were generally passionate. And I've learned often in politics that a passionate minority beats a tepid majority every time. Every time. So if you see us doing something moving that way, I think it'll be really good in the child care space. So lean in. And the second thing, when Senator Murray and I reintroduce our comprehensive child care bill, it could be in April, could be in May, please engage. Actually, Rebecca Howard from my staff is here. She's working a lot on this. Engage right now with Team Murray and Team Kaine, just so that we can make sure that the proposal that we introduce is the best fit for what you think needs are. But then when we do that, we would also really love to have your support.
Well, most optimistic is just young people are so inspiring. So when you get discouraged and beat down on things, looking at young folks who are engaged in the political process across the spectrum and optimistically looking towards the future, even anxiously looking towards the future, they are what inspires me. And the call to action, I would just say, you all are on the right focus on economic security for women, and especially at the lowest end of the economic spectrum. I was so crushed that the child tax credit was allowed to expire. I thought that was just a crucial. When people ask me, education policy is my key focus academically and otherwise, and what was the most important thing we could do to improve academic performance, it was pass the child tax credit. Because if we can attack that economic early impact on children, by raising up the wealth of families and the income of families, that's really the heart of it. And when you look at how our country compares to other countries that have reasonable social safety networks, that's really the key. So if we can ever get back to the point where we can build that put the child tax credit back on the radar, let's make that happen.
Couldn't end any better. This has been an incredible treat. Thank you so much for being here, and mostly thank you for your leadership on these issues.
Really good to come. And Gail Manchin is a great friend, and I wish I could stay for her panel, but I am managing a bill on the Senate floor today to repeal the Iraq war authorization. So we haven't repealed a war authorization since 1971. So I'm racing back up to the hill, but good to see you here, Gail.